In Chivalry 2 there are several playstyles which will enable you to get loads and loads of kills. In this video I will show you one of these playstyles. This specific method is used by a lot of good and high level team objective players and is a lot of fun while also being extremely effective. And important for all the new players, this playstyle is really easy to adopt. So what is this playstyle all about? To give you a brief overview before we get into the specifics, the cornerstones of this playstyle are the Executioner's Axe, looking for big group fights or 1vx fights, focusing on ripostes and counters and playing reactive in general, and also utilizing heavy horizontal swings and drags. Alright, now let's get into the specifics where we'll talk about every single one of these 5 points and explain in detail how it fits into the playstyle. First, let's talk about the Executioner's Axe and why it's such a good weapon. One really good aspect about this weapon is that you can kill every single enemy with 2 heavy horizontal swings, unless your enemy was overhealed by the Warhorn. On top of that, the Executioner's Axe has a really good range and the weapon is not too slow, which makes it overall a great pick for big group fights and 1vx situations. If you don't like the Executioner's Axe, there are also other possible weapon choices for this playstyle. For example, the War Axe, Battle Axe and Dane Axe, but also the two-handed hammer, the heavy mace and the maul. But I would highly recommend to use the Executioner's Axe because its range can make such a huge difference in big group fights. In some scenarios the extra range can be the deciding factor whether you hit 2 enemies or 5 enemies, for example. And since you're actively looking for big group fights and 1vx situations with this playstyle, you just need the range, it will help you a lot. And on top of that, the Executioner's Axe has one of the best drags in this game. Okay, now let's talk about the next important aspect of this playstyle. You want to actively look for big group fights and 1vx fights. And the explanation for that is quite simple. In these type of fights you will have the most possibilities for kills. Every additional enemy in your vicinity means one more chance to hit somebody with your great reach and damage. And since you can kill every enemy with 2 heavy horizontal swings, these type of fights are just perfect for you and the Executioner's Axe. The next cornerstone of this playstyle is using ripostes and counters. If you don't know what ripostes and counters are, open my beginner's guide on YouTube and jump to the corresponding timestamp. Right here you can see why they are so important to utilize. Whenever you riposte or counter, you have a time frame of roughly half a second where you block incoming attacks from the front. And exactly this can be seen here. I'm blocking attacks while I'm already striking. Without ripostes or counters, this whole playstyle would not work, so really focus on that if you're trying to adopt this playstyle. If you're a beginner, it can be easier to just focus on ripostes, so whenever multiple enemies are in front of you, block first and then strike. This is a relatively safe way to get a lot of kills in group fights while also being able to survive. And now let's get to the next important aspect of this playstyle, heavy horizontal swings. There are 2 reasons why you mainly want to focus on heavy horizontal swings and not regular horizontal swings. And while the first reason is pretty obvious, I'm really sure that most viewers and most players, even experienced players, will not know the second reason. I would even go as far and say that at least 95% of players don't know about this yet. But let's start with the obvious reason: heavy horizontal swings deal more damage than regular swings. And for the Executioner's Axe, this can make the difference between killing an enemy with 2 strikes or 3 strikes. And now let's get to the second reason why heavy horizontal attacks are so important. Whenever you use a regular horizontal swing and your enemy counters it, your attack will stop. And you will not be able to hit additional enemies with your swing, just as you can see now. But this is not the case for heavy horizontal swings. So let's watch the slow motion a couple of times. The regular attack was countered and stopped, so I would not have been able to hit enemies to the right of my enemy here. But the heavy horizontal attack continues. And now imagine being in a group fight with 10 enemies in front of you. You definitely do not want your attack to stop just because one of them counters it. So the only reliable way to hit every enemy in front of you is by using heavy horizontal swings. But keep in mind that heavy attacks have a longer wind-up time and cost stamina, so it can be riskier overall, but the risk is worth it in most cases. And now let's get to the last important aspect of this playstyle, drags. Dragging your attack means delaying your attack, and you do this by facing away from your opponent while striking him. The Executioner's Axe is the perfect weapon to perform drags with. And if you haven't added drags into your repertoire yet, you will be surprised by how many more hits you will actually get through. And drags work so well because they mess with the counter window of your enemies. They expect your hit to reach them sooner than it actually does because you drag it away from them, and so they input their counter attack way too early. And drags are overall a good way to win 1v1s or fights against few enemies. But with every additional enemy, your drags will become riskier and riskier, because your chance of being interrupted will rise significantly. Alright, now it's your turn to hop into the game and put these 5 aspects together. If you'd like to see more playstyles which can result in insanely high amounts of kills, let me know in the comments. I could show at least 2 more which are completely different but also extremely effective and fun. And as always, see you on the battlefield.